Hi, and welcome to this second tutorial about C# in Visual Studio Express 2010. My name is Jordan Tönnissen, and this tutorial will cover variables and data types. Let's start off by starting Visual C# and start a new project. I'm going to call this program 2. Before we start typing, I want to explain a little bit about what variables are and what data types are. When you're programming, you have all sorts of information, and you want to store this information in temporary memory places. Now, to access these memory places, we use variables. For instance, we've made a calculation between two numbers, number 8 and number 13. And we want to store this calculation so that we can use it later on, for instance to print it to the screen. Now, to store this information, we need to say to our computer we want to make a new variable, and we have to say from which data type is this variable. For instance, it contains numbers, and we have to assign it a value. In these introduction tutorials, we are going to cover a couple of data types. The first one we're going to learn is the integer. I'll show you now how you can declare, that's how you call that, declaring a variable. That is, setting up a variable and assigning a value to it. I'm going to say int, which stands for integer. Then I'm going to specify the name for this variable, and that's also called the identifier, and I'm gonna call it my number. That's how I'm gonna call it. Then I'm gonna say my number is 5, and then we're gonna close this line off with a semicolon. Now we have declared a new variable called my number, and which has a value of 5. Important to know about an integer is that you cannot use 5.5. That's not possible. Integers can only have whole numbers. Let's take a look at another data type. String. String contains text. I'm going to call this my text. To assign text to a variable of data type string, we need to use double quotes. For instance, hello there. Once again, we close this line with a semicolon. To use a number that does have a comma, we can use a double. I'm going to call this my number, comma. I'm going to give this the variable 6.89. The next variable that we're going to use a lot is called a boolean. You can use either the word bool or boolean, they're exactly the same. A boolean value can only contain two values, either true or false. I'm going to call this my boolean, and I'm going to set it to false. You cannot assign any other data to this boolean. For instance, you cannot type text true. That's not possible, because that's not what a boolean variable is. Okay. Now that we have these 4 variables and with 4 different data types, we can do things with them. We're going to call console.writeLine, and then we're going to say my number dot to string. When we do this, we convert our number to a string and we print it to the screen. The actual variable my number is not being converted to a string. Just this output here in the console, that's going to be converted to a string. Let's copy this line 3 times. In the second line, we're going to say my text. Now, since my text is already a string, we do not have to convert it to a string. So we can just simply leave it at that. My number comma is a double, and we do have to convert it. And the same thing for my boolean. Be sure to add these parentheses behind the toString. Last thing, we just need to say readline so that the program waits for an enter to be given. And here we can see our output. First we have the 5 of my number, hello there, 6,89, which is a double variable, and a value of my boolean, which is true. Variables and data types are the most important thing about any program language. Variables are used to store information. C# contains many variable data types. You can also make your own data type. However, that's something for later lessons. For the first few tutorials, we'll only be using integers, strings, doubles, and booleans. And that also covers this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we're going to cover operators. Thanks for watching this tutorial, and goodbye.